privileged. Another gift that the wise men give us is to smack down our self-importance. In this case, I'm thinking of a poem, not a poem, something that ran around the internet for the last 10 years because it was passed around by letters before. What would have happened if it had been 3 wise women instead of 3 wise men? They would have asked for directions. They would have arrived on time. They would have helped deliver the baby. They would have cleaned the stable, made a casserole, and brought practical gifts. Who said anywhere that magi, meaning seer, because it's the same word from which we get the word magician, magi, magician, who said they all have to be male? We just assumed. I mean, we meaning men. Men have been assuming that they run the world for a long time. We see today that there is still inequity in terms of gender, especially in places like Afghanistan and some of the more remote regions of Asia and Africa. But come on, guys. We still tend to equivocate around local gender equity issues. How many of us really help out at home? Really? Come on. I don't see too many. Okay, a little bit. We still tend to think of that as being women's work, don't we? Economic equity is still not true. Glass ceilings still do exist. Not only glass, by the way. And while 50% of the country is female, give or take, I still only see about 8 senators in Washington who are women. I don't understand why we men have this problem. Germaine Greer, the feminist, at one point said the easiest way to get a man to understand why feminism is important to him is to say, would you want your daughter to be worse off than you? All fathers want their daughters to succeed. I do not have daughters, and I'm a poorer man for it. We need to see the wise men or women as reminding us men that we are also half female, remember? We all have an X chromosome. It's ours as much as theirs. A third gift is if you want to call it a gift, a third reminder. The gift of being reminded is that we are all a little bit selfish. And I'm talking about individually now. We are very much enamored of rich people, aren't we? What is it that Tevye says in The Fiddler on the Roof? That when you're rich, they think you really know. In other words, we tend to think rich people are smart and therefore they should run the world. Our U.S. Congress, over a majority of them are millionaires. I don't see this room as being equally distributed that way. And so we do live in a plutocracy. And we do that because we worship wealth. We think that people earn this money, and I'm not saying they don't work hard, but I've yet to meet someone who is, well, if Bill Gates has $100 billion, I don't think he's working 100 billion times harder than someone who makes $1 a day. I just can't do that math in my head. So what I'm trying to say here is that everyone who's rich didn't earn all of it. And at one point they weren't rich. Everyone who was powerful at some point was powerless. Everyone who was important was once overlooked, but we tend to forget those things when we obtain wealth and power. We compete. We are told we should compete. Our children should compete. Our schools should compete. The United States should compete with other places. We should all be competing all the time. Strive to be best, which all I can tell makes out someone has to be a loser. And yet, so, if I win and you lose, how do I win? What do I get for beating you in some competition? I get nothing by competing with anyone here, because the loss of the other person is now my loss as well. It ultimately is theft, and we know it. The wise men remind us that whenever we compete and win, we are taking from another, but also from ourselves. The gift of the Magi are not gifts we like to acknowledge. The gift of the Magi is to see that everything we are comes from everybody else. Do you know you're probably all descendants of the Prophet Muhammad? Someone did the math once. He had a number of offspring who had a number of offspring. And despite the fact that you're not Muslim, genes have a way of getting out from under religious stuff. We are probably all related to the Prophet Muhammad. Here's the other part. In 10,000 years or 1,000 years, all the descendants on the globe will be related to you. So how can we not see this? A great preacher that I've known by reputation for a long time was A. Powell Davies. He preached in the U.S. Capitol at All Souls Church there, and he wrote something I want to share with you. It's called Strange, Foolish Walls. The years of all of us are short, our lives precarious. Our days and nights go hurrying on, and there's scarcely time to do the little that we might. Yet we find time for bitterness, for petty treason and evasion. What can we do to stretch our hearts enough to lose their littleness? Here we are, all of us, all upon this planet, bound together in a common destiny, living our lives between the briefness of the daylight and the dark. Kindred in this, each lighted by the same precarious, flickering flame of life. How does it happen that we are not kindred in all other things? How strange and foolish are these walls that divide us. We need walls protecting us against the storm, to hold in the warmth so we can be safe. But we also use walls to separate and expel. The spiritual challenge that brings you here every week, that brings me here every week, and we both struggle to articulate, is to tell the difference between the walls that hold love in and those that shut love out. It's hard to tell, comrades. That's why we need the three wise men, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, coming up out of their tombs, marching into our lives to remind us that humanity, all of it, lives in our very skin. There's not a day that has happened that is not in your bones. There's not a dream that will be dreamed that is not in your mind. Every sorrow is here. Every hope is here. Every pain is here. Every victory is here. And the promise of Christmas, of the babe in the manger, the angels in the sky, is that somehow, each of us can become that incarnation of hope. Friends, be of good courage. Christmas has come. The babe is born. The angels are back at their flocks, and the wise men are on their way back east. Rejoice. A new day has come.